welcome back. It's us at Unfinished Business Television bringing you a whole spanking new episode. I don't know why I made a fist for spank. But anyway, I am your host, Jeff Galashaw at Unfinished B2. And with me, as always, is Andre Joseph of AJ Epics Productions.
Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers who did not go into the jungle and get killed by spiders, researching spiders.
A reference to, what the heck was that crappy movie?
A movie that was made out of ChatGPT.
Okay. And we are back, and we have plenty of news, reviews, and trailers. And as always, we have to report some dearly departed people. So, without further ado, let's get to the news. Okay, first up, we have Liam Neeson starring in the Naked Gun reboot. But the big news is they finally found a leading lady for the film in the form of Pamela Anderson, which kind of works, but it also, I don't know. It's supposed to be a spoof movie, but I'm wondering, are we remaking and just modernizing it, or is it just going to be, again, just a general, like, silly comedy? Because with this cast list, I don't know if you remember, like, Leslie Nielsen used to always keep making these types of movies, but, you know, the quality kept going down. And at one point, I think he made a movie called Spy Hard with Nicolette Sheridan.
I saw that in the theater.
Oh, man. And that's the type of, like, quality cast this sounds like. Like, we have this highly respected actor doing comedy, finally. And then, hey, let's throw in Pamela Anderson, who was, like, a sex symbol 20 years ago and who kind of had a resurgence recently. I mean, I'm sure she's a very nice person. Acting-wise, I mean, she did what she had to do with her roles, but it was never like they gave her compelling writing, to act with. So, I mean, it's interesting, but it seems more like a little bit more like stunt casting. Like around the time when Barbed Wire was coming out, this would have been like, whoa, she's finally getting a legitimate movie. Now it's just like, okay, are we going to resurrect anybody else we haven't heard from? Is like Michael DeLuise going to be showing up in this movie? Is Johnny Depp going to play a cameo as the villain? I don't know. What do you think of this news?
I don't mind it. I mean, look, Priscilla Presley was probably irrelevant for a decade when she did Naked Gun 1. So, Pamela Anderson hasn't been superbly relevant since 2000. It's not far off. I mean, look, we're old now. Everything that was 40 years old to us is now 40 years old to these kids, and Naked Gun is close to that at this point. I'm actually, I'm actually kind of excited for this, and I'll tell you why. Because I remember when they were talking about doing a fourth one, it was right after Leslie Nielsen died, and the plan was to make fun of all the dirty cop movies of the 2000s, like Training Day and The Departed. There was going to be a joke about a certain guy we're going to talk about later in our obituaries, and they were even going to make fun of the fact that it was supposed to be Frank Drebin's son, even though like he's like maybe half the guy's age and not really like plausible to be his kid. And I think Ed Helms was going to play the new Frank Drebin, but this is better. I like the idea of Liam Neeson finally doing some real comedy where we could just finally poke fun at all the Taken movies and all the other action films he's done, because it's overplayed and it's time to make fun of all that. And let's just throw everything, including the kitchen sink, to make this a laugh-out riot. Unfortunately, you don't have the Zuckers involved. That's the only concern I have. But I think with Liam Neeson there, it could really have the potential of having some amazing comedy if he plays it straight. And then you throw in, not just Pamela Anderson, but maybe you get another Star Trek actor to play the villain. Maybe you get, I don't know, Marshawn Lynch as the new Nordberg. Like, that would be kind of cool to see.
I'd be like, if you put Ed Helms maybe in the George Kennedy role or as the villain, this could work. I'm just like, as long as you don't get those guys who made those spoof movies like every year.
Oh, yeah. Hell no. I think they're doing like Tubi movies now. They're not really.
Oh, okay. Because I was about to say, don't let those guys near. I mean, I'm looking forward to. I'd have to see a trailer to see the type of humor that it would be in, and that's just. But it is a little sad that it's like Priscilla Presley. She seemed like she more like a surprise when you watch that film. You know, like she's in this universe, whereas Pamela Anderson, you would kind of expect like as a cameo, like in an Austin Powers movie. You know, not
Wasn't
being
she
the
in one of the Scary Movie sequels, one of the bad ones?
yeah. Well, I don't know if it was the bad one because I think it was the one after two because it was like
Yeah.
her and Jenny McCarthy. You know, but again, that was a cameo. It wasn't like she starred in them. You know, and I just hope this doesn't kind of reek of the Scary Movie sequels either. You know.
Mm.
Next, since everybody loves a biofilm all of a sudden, now we have a Bruce Springsteen biofilm with Jeremy Allen White playing Bruce Springsteen. Um, okay. You know, I like Bruce Springsteen music. I'm not his biggest fan. So, again, I mean, he's still alive. So, is this going to be like an Elton John type film where we reveal stuff like, oh, I did not know that about Bruce Springsteen's life, even though it seems like most people know almost everything about him, you know, who are fans. So, I mean, again, I'd have to see who's going to be attach themselves to it for me to really start getting excited or really kind of care about this project.
Um, I could be wrong on this, but I think I read somewhere that it wasn't going to be a full-blown life story. It was going to be mostly about the run up to the Born to Run album, his seminal album that obviously made him a big name in the 1970s. I will profess I'm not the biggest Bruce Springsteen fan. There's some songs that I like when they're on the radio or, like when you see it in a movie. I'm not going to go out of my way of saying, well, I'm going to go out and see a show of his if he's in town. But hey, this is where we're at right now. We got a Michael Jackson biopic coming out. You got Bruce Springsteen. You got Bob Dylan. That terrible Amy Winehouse movie, which, looks horrible. And so this is where we're at with Hollywood. And, if you could do something a little bit different, maybe keep it contained to a particular period, I think that'll make it a little bit different. And Jerry Allen White's a very good actor, though I really would like to see him play Gene Wilder in a biopic.
Well, that would be a more interesting project, but then it kind of reminds me of like, remember when they were going to make the Madonna biofilm and Madonna was going to direct it? I hate to say it, that was more interesting to me because I'd like to see, it would feel like JoJo Dancer with Richard Pryor. I would like to see somebody take on their own iconic legend. And they were like supposedly putting all the actresses through Madonna boot camp. It's like, just the behind the scenes on that movie sounded more interesting.
I still think they should cast our friend Kitty Pirelli as Madonna.
I have no problem with that because either way, it doesn't matter who stars in these films as long as they can do the performance, and especially being with Madonna as a demanding director. Like I never would do that, like okay. Next. Everybody's favorite director, Zack Snyder, his movie Rebel Moon Part 2, The Scar Giver, just recently came out. And unfortunately, I watched it. And I will just say, I felt like Part 1 was better, and I didn't even like that movie. That shows you the quality of Part 2. But he claims, unfortunately, you could tell by the ending, that he's working on part 3 of this movie. But not only that, he has ideas for 6 more sequels. I think he has James Cameron syndrome, where at least with Avatar, the first film was decent. So when you hear, oh, they're going to make sequels, at first you're like, why? But it's like, okay. When you hear Rebel Moon 6 sequels, like, why? The first ones weren't good. So unless it somehow gets better along the way, it makes no sense. But not only that, he has shot more footage for Sucker Punch so he can finally have his director's cut, but only if the studio agrees to it. And my thing with Zack Snyder is that I feel like me and a friend were recently talking, And I feel like when it comes to Zack Snyder, he's like a spoiled kid who's never been told no. Because he keeps wanting to make these projects like Rebel Moon, which is his response to they turned down my Star Wars pitch, so I'm going to make a whole separate movie. And it's basically a Star Wars movie, or it's just Star Wars, just with different names and also the Seven Samurai. That's basically what part 2 is. And it's just like, why does every movie you make need a director's cut that no one asks for? Just because your Justice League movie, you had fans clamoring for that. Now you expect them to always get behind you to like whatever film in the past or future you make, because he's the one who forced this Watchmen longer cut on DVD special edition that really was okay. This is pretty much the same, but okay, and. I mean, the only good thing is that now that he's working with Netflix, he isn't pushing bad soundtrack albums with these films. Andre, what do you feel about Zack Snyder, at least as far as the sequels and the Sucker Punch director's cut?
Well, there's an article that just came out. I didn't get to read it, but I saw the headline and it kind of made me think. It basically was saying Zack Snyder would probably be a better fit for making video games than movies. You know, how video games these days, you put it out, then you put out like the DLC and the patch so you can kind of expand on it, improve on all of the flaws of the game, whatever technical issues there might be. You could just like throw up a patch that people can download and fix it. This is where I think he's at, and I'm kind of getting sick and tired of it. I think he is talented. He has a great visual style, but enough of these overbloated epic sci-fi movies that you feel, oh, it's not really completely done and I have to go back and constantly keep reworking it and putting out a new cut here and there. I've seen people do that where they're just never satisfied with what they put out and they keep tinkering with it to the point where it just gets messy and mushy. Because even with the Justice League director's cut, I thought, yes, way better than the theatrical cut that they put out, but I would still cut a lot of shit out because it was way too padded and there was way too much that I think kind of dragged it down a bit. And these fans of his, there are good things that they do when it comes to charities, especially, after his daughter's passing. But my God, it's like they really worship at the altar of this man to the point where it's like they can't think objectively about just how self-indulgent he is as a filmmaker. It's just really ridiculous. And to constantly go back to Sucker Punch and all these other movies that he did in the past that really were not that good and trying to say, oh yeah, I'm just gonna be director's cut of this and that. It's like, come on, just stop it already. Even like I have not watched any of these Rebel Moon movies, but you could tell when they put out these metrics that the numbers are not high for the second one as they were for the first. That's telling you nobody really gives a shit. I mean, I commend him for saying, okay, they're not gonna let me do a Star Wars movie. I'll just do my own version of it and just try to do his own original idea. I, will give him kudos for swinging for the fences on that. But this isn't working. This isn't connecting. Just stop. Just find something else to do because this is not catching on. Your fan base is just a cult, but they're not necessarily getting you where you need to be in terms of making A-list movies again.
Well, I think when it comes to Zack Snyder, maybe if he had like a separate screenwriter, maybe these films could be decent. Because like you said, he does definitely have a visual style. But everything else in his movies are usually like piss poor, subpar. Yeah. So, I mean, like I said, I have hope because you got to also keep in mind his best movie so far is one that was already a remake, his first film, yeah. Dawn of the Dead. So, wasted talents. And so next we go to the shocking news that the Sundance Film Festival is actually thinking of moving after 2027. Now, this is, a staple of independent cinema, this film festival. And I'm sure it definitely helped the city of Utah with, money and income, with this festival incoming. And the thing that I appreciate about the Sundance Film Festival was that it was out. I've never been, but it was out in Utah, so it was so far away from Hollywood that you didn't have as many industry people around you. Even though it became like now this big de jour party city, rather than actually being a film festival to celebrate art. And it's gotten away from Robert Redford's vision, obviously, and it also, I think it's also kind of lost its kind of fame and prestige, because remember, back in the day, you won Sundance Film Festival, it was almost guaranteed your film was going to be a hit. Now it seems like so many movies win Sundance and still kind of have problems, either A, finding a distributor, or B, even like getting an audience to come and watch it in theaters, because again, we have all this streaming and all these different ways of watching movies, so that you didn't have to go to the theater to go catch these movies. You could just be like, oh, sometimes they premiere on, like, let's say a Hulu or a Netflix, rather than even making it to a theater. Because I remember back in the day, like when Welcome to the Dollhouse won all those audience awards, back when I was in high school, I stayed until Sunday, till a midnight show, just so I could see that movie, in theaters and have it not be spoiled. And I mean, nowadays, that's how you have to do it. But back then, we didn't even have computers so much so that you had to worry about somebody on a message board telling you, oh, this is how it ends. So it also kind of feels like, I mean, that era has already kind of passed. But now with it moving, it feels like, I don't know, like your favorite store that used to be a New York exclusive not only moves, but now becomes kind of syndicated for other states, like, oh, I used to go to Red Robin in New York, but now the only place I can go, the only place I can get it is outside of New York City. It just doesn't feel the same. How do you feel about the Sundance moving, or maybe moving?
Well, you're 100% right about Red Robin, because the one that used to be by my mall is gone and haven't found one since. Yeah, I have a friend of mine who used to be a programmer for Sundance, and I remember we were talking a few years ago because he has a festival out in Charlottesville, and he was telling me, yeah, it's completely gone away from Robert Redford's vision. Those days, as you said, where the Quentin Tarantinos, the Robert Rodriguez's, the Kevin Smiths, those people, Allison Anders, all those people who had films and broke out because of Sundance, those days are long over, and it's like I've already been turned off by it in the years since you just start to see more films that they only accept because they have name actors involved or a
Yes.
certain name director is attached, or it's got to be a racy subject like, oh, Leaving Neverland, or we need to talk about Cosby. And it's just like, that's what really turned me off from even submitting a movie to that festival. Not just because it's corporate, because they made it such a high bar to get accepted, but it's totally not what Robert Redford had envisioned when the purpose of that festival was to get independent films their audience, because he came up at that time when Star Wars and Superman and all these big blockbusters were coming around. See, like, that's where Hollywood's going. They want those big spectacles. What about those middle of the road movies that people relate to, that tell real stories in, narrative fiction or documentary? So now to take it to that next level, yeah, I mean, sadly, it makes sense to just call it something else and put it in another town because, like you said, now it's really like Coachella. It's just like the cool place to be where like Kim Kardashian will come and find her next boyfriend and her next baby daddy. That's basically what this thing has come down to, and it's sad. And if you were to go now, and this is what my friend did, instead of just trying to go to that festival simply to get acceptance, you kind of try to do something else within the town, like, go to a bar and host your own screenings for the movies that didn't get into Sundance. That's why you have like those partnerships like No Dance Film Festival and some
Slam
others that are
dance.
Slam Dance, that are there for those filmmakers to show those alternatives. And sometimes they even get more people to those screenings than the actual Sundance screenings themselves. So I think that has to be encouraged a little bit more if you're looking to find success as an indie filmmaker, because where it says at right now is just, yeah, Hollywood took it over, and Redford, obviously, he's long retired now, so there's just no hope for it anymore. I wouldn't be surprised if it moves away.
Well, and it's just like how you were saying, like there's no stars that come out of it anymore. Like no new filmmakers, no new voices. They have to, unfortunately, probably make a bunch of like bad studio films just so they can maybe get enough like clout or get enough money to make, let's say, an original project half the time. Or it's going to be ultra low budget when they do make a film, because unless they have a star in it somehow. So it's another end of an era. Um, Next we have Denis Villeneuve and Dune Part 3, which is still a maybe as his next film. He hasn't decided, as he might be circling a Cleopatra film, but he says that the Chani, Zendaya's character, is the secret weapon for Part 3, and he knows exactly what he wants to do with the sequel. So at least he's prepared for when he finally does make that film. But again, as with most of these big films, that's a chunk of your life going into making this. And especially now with everybody talking about how like Doom 2 is one of the best movies ever, that's not an easy way to come in and like, oh, let's make 3. It's easy when you're, let's say, George Lucas and Empire Strikes Back, it comes out. Everybody's loving it, talking about how good it is, and you're already making Part 3. So you're not really hearing this feedback until you're in the middle of making Part 3. But now he's had time to bask in, how the qualities and good graces of how much everybody likes Dune 2. But can you get yourself back to the mindset that you had maybe when you were making Dune 2, where you weren't thinking, oh, I have to follow a film that everybody like thinks is one of the best in the world. That's some added pressure, even if you do have a plan. I feel like, I guess it depends on your vision, because I feel like it leads to you maybe second guessing yourself a little bit more than you ever had to before.
Yeah, so just to correct you on one thing, I don't know if he's doing a Cleopatra movie. I think he's actually doing an adaptation of a novel that deals with nuclear war, or the possibility of what would happen in a nuclear war. So
Okay.
that might be his next movie before he makes Doom Messiah. But everything else, yeah, is on point. That it will be Doom Messiah. It'll be mostly focused on Shawnee, because Paul Atreides is going to go on Michael Corleone. Like it's going to get dark on his end, and the setup with and Anya Taylor Joy being the dead sister also plays into that. Certain dead characters come back as clones, apparently, and that's the gist of what I know about the story. I mean, I've seen some of like the Sci-Fi Channel adaptation of Dune, where they did Children of Dune, and a little bit of the book. But yeah, I mean, it's going to have to take some time. I think he needs that break, come back into it fresh when some of these actors are available, a little bit older, and yeah, you make this one pretty damn dark. I mean, that's the way you got to do it. So yeah, I'm willing to wait for it if it gets it right.
Okay. Next, Steven Spielberg decided to drop the Bullet remake with Bradley Cooper. Thankfully, because I was worried there for a second that is that going to be the career? We're just going to really make movies you liked. I mean, and now he's going to start work on an original UFO film. I mean, it's not foreign territory for him, but I'm happy. It's not a Bullet remake. Let me put it that way. Which I didn't really see a need for, especially when you have all these cop procedural shows already, or anti-hero series. Like, we really needed another one with basically Bradley Cooper can pretend to be Chris Christopherson again. Another film. How are you feeling about Mr. Spielberg's decision?
Well, I mean, I'm indifferent about him redoing Bullet. I mean, I think he was going to try to do like a completely new story, but likely would have redone the car chase in it. But I think doing an Alien movie just sounds like it's just an attempt because The Fablemans didn't actually do like great box office despite the good reviews that it got. So
Hmm.
I guess maybe somebody got in his ear and said, you got to go back to do like your standard blockbusters like in the old days, do another Close Encounters, another ET. And I'm just like, why aliens again, Steven? We've already been down this road way too many times. There's already enough alien movies out there. I mean, what else are you gonna do? You're gonna remake Fire in the Sky? Like, come on, man. You're at that point. Do something else that might be exciting. The alien shit's played out.
He should make a Western. And
Yeah, I would love to see a Steven Spielberg Western. He would kick ass at that.
exactly, especially after, at the end of Fablemans with David Lynch's role as, what was it, John?
Oh, John Ford.
Yeah, John Ford. So be like, hey, I'm just following the track with that movie rather than, like you said, aliens again. Steven, come on. Oh, well, it can't even be. He's already done violent aliens with War of the Worlds, so it's not like, oh, all your films have like nice, cute little aliens. Now we got violent. You've already had violent ones, so what's this story gonna be? I'm like, I mean, I'm interested because it's Steven Spielberg, though I want to be the studio executive who's like, look, we gave you money for the Fablemans, and now that bombed on us. You got shit on us. You owe us some pearls, buddy. So you make an alien film. Go back to doing what you do. I don't care about your reputation. I am of this next generation. Your movies are fairy tales.
Sadly, yeah, that's how some of these execs think now. Imagine David Zaslav sitting there and, like he tells Clint Eastwood, no, you're fucking retiring after one more movie.
He just, maybe David Zaslav, who might have been around when, they had the Zuckers who ran their studio. Maybe he's like, I want to be like that. I've got fuck you money now.
He wants to be like Rick Moranis at head office till he has a heart attack.
Well, if he keeps canceling movies that people might have actually wanted to see, so he can just get them as tax write-offs, maybe that's what's going to happen. And
yeah, fuck that guy.
Next, we have one of our favorites, Martin Scorsese, finally making the film he's been talking about forever. He's going to make a Frank Sinatra, supposedly, biofilm with Leonardo DiCaprio and Jennifer Lawrence as Rita Hayworth. Okay. I have no problem with Jennifer Lawrence as Rita Hayworth. And I mean, I remember when this project was supposed to originally be all about Dean Martin, and then it would include various members of the Rat Pack in his story, which is the project I'd rather see, because I guess I saw the Ray Liotta Rat Pack movie, and I was like, this is good enough for me. That's all I need to know about Frank, other than maybe reading bios of him. But also, he is talking about his Life of Jesus movie that he's talking to Miles Teller and Andrew Garfield for that movie, which I'm sure Andrew Garfield's had. He's like, oh, now you remember me? I was in, when it's a Christian movie, you call me. Anything else, I get no call. How do you feel about the news on both of these projects?
Yeah, I'm good with both of them. I'm already picturing like, okay, you do the Frank Sinatra movie, maybe you get Miles Teller as Dean Martin. I don't know, the kid from Stranger Things is Sammy Davis Jr. possibly, or that kid that was in the New Edition movie could play Sammy Davis Jr. Yeah, and you got to tell his whole story. I don't think it should just stop with the 60s. You got to go like old Frank Sinatra, where he was like angry and, fighting paparazzi. That would be cool to see DiCaprio do. He's got the look, and you could dub his voice over with the singing, and he'll be fine. The Jesus movie, yeah, give it to me. Andrew Garfield is Jesus. I mean, people love him now anyway, so I could totally see that work.
I just I want to see the audience member who believes that Leonardo DiCaprio sounds like that singing, though.
Well, did you believe Ray Liotta singing as the Rat Pack movie?
Well, he was supposed to be old Frank Sinatra, not like, hey, Pepe, And I mean, the only thing that will be hard to believe is Leo DiCaprio with a female over 25 years old in a movie. You'll be like, oh, this is acting. And he's like, it reminds me of Jack Nicholson in About Schmidt, where they gave him an age-appropriate wife, but they had like no real scenes of romance or love together. Where it's like, he's like, oh, what? No, stay back.
Cast Rachel Ziegler as Ava Gardner.
Why not? You just always gotta cast Rachel Ziegler.
It always goes back to the Ziegler.
Exactly. Every project, you're like her agent. Is there a role for Ziegler here somehow? Hey, Spielberg, this Alien movie. Do you need a young lady lead?
She does look like an alien.
She doesn't look like an alien. This is supposed to be your girl. You're like dissing her.
Hey, I'm not trying to do statutory shit.
She's over 18, and she just looks that young. But anyway,
they say the same thing about Jenna Ortega.
Yeah, I don't see her in any way, shape, or form like that. She's a good actress, but I don't see her past that. Just like Zendaya, who is 25. It's like, you're a good actress, but I can't see you any other way. Sonic the Hedgehog. Keanu Reeves is voicing Shadow. Now, I'm not sure. Is this movie supposed to come out this year or next year?
This year.
Oh, so it'll probably be by the end of the year?
It might be the end of the summer, I think.
Well, see, my thing is, I still have never watched the first two Sonic the Hedgehog. Look, I've played the game many a time. When it came to the movies, it's just like, and especially after the controversy over the look of Sonic the Hedgehog, I was just like, you know what? I'm not dipping my toes into these waters. So, I mean, it's like Toy Story. Maybe someday I'll finally watch these movies, but as of right now, still have not watched a Sonic movie.
I think they're fun. I mean, I'm not crazy about the real world setting, but I love the fact that at least they've made attempts to make the real world look like the levels from the game, especially in the second movie. So I have no problem with this. I think that I don't know too much about Shadow because he came from like the later Sonic games, like Sonic Adventures and all that stuff. I pretty much stopped at Sonic and Knuckles as a kid, and then I had my I guess my PlayStation at that point. But hey, they got everybody back in there. Jim Carrey's coming out of retirement to play Robotnik, so I think it should be fine. And Keanu Reeves could definitely play Dark, so why not? Let's see it.
Okay. Next, the big news: Quentin Tarantino 10th film will not be the movie Critic, which he just decided at the last minute to cancel filming, though they said he was just going to start filming parts this year and then was going to actually go into full-on production next year. But now we're getting all this information, like Cliff Booth was supposed to be also in this film, so it would seem more like a Once Upon a Time in Hollywood spinoff movie. And apparently he had talked to Olivia Wilde about a role, but also David Krumholtz for a role in the movie. And supposedly Paul Walter Hauser, who was rumored to star in it, said that nobody even came to him and talked to him about this movie. So he had no knowledge really other than what everybody else heard about being in the film. And also that Tom Cruise, interestingly enough, almost played Cliff Booth in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but his schedule just could never match up. And I mean, Quentin has kind of done this before because the Hateful Eight originally started as a Django sequel until he decided to make it into a whole nother project. And I think another film he decided last minute not to make, then a few months later decided, no, I'm going to make that film. So this sounds like an interesting project. So it'll be interesting over, I guess, time, because who knows, there's no time constraints, to see what he eventually decides to do as his 10th film. I don't know if maybe he wanted to go out on something more original rather than, a spin-off movie, even though he wants to do a television series based on the Western character in, that Leo DiCaprio's character was on as a series for Netflix or some streaming channel. So I'm like, so if you don't want to return to the past, what are you gonna do? Like, are you gonna do the Kill Bill 3, which most people want? I know it's not gonna be the Star Trek movie, So it's like, so what other projects do you have brewing? And Double V Vega, I don't know if you could really. Nobody wants to see John Travolta and Michael Madsen star as their characters, who would have been much younger if they would have made that film. And you're not gonna make either of them look younger now, unless you're gonna pull in Austin Butler, and get some actor who just miraculously looks like a young John Travolta. Which I would suggest then putting Mila Kunis in drag. and then you have your John Travolta. What do you feel about this whole Quentin Tarantino debacle?
It's a shame. I mean, I was looking forward to this. He probably just felt the pressure because it's supposed to be his last movie, and maybe there were just certain logistics that were just not lining up with the script or with the actors he wanted. I mean, keep in mind, this is a guy that really doesn't take a whole lot of script notes from people. He'll just have actors come together, read through, and then he can kind of get the sense of what he needs to fix and change. And maybe there were just things that weren't vibing with whoever he was considering. So maybe he either needs more time to refine the script, maybe to get it away from being a spinoff of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, or he just flat out decided, you know what, I want to tackle a different genre because maybe he felt like he was retreading the same waters again, like he did that last movie. Maybe he wanted something else.
Well, I guess he didn't want to keep making revisionist history of his own making. But my thing is, well, if the pressure's on him, that's his own fault because he's the one who said, hey, I'm retired. Because he also said he didn't want to keep making films after 60. He's 61 now, So it's like, you did this to yourself, sir. So you have no one else really to blame. But I will be interested in whatever, he touches, whatever projects are coming up. So hopefully it will be worth it. Next, speaking of Paul Walter Hauser, he is rumored to be playing Chris Farley in an adaptation of the Chris Farley Show, the book about Chris Farley's life. And Josh Gad is to direct this film. I'm just like, so was it like all the overweight guys in Hollywood had to get together to make this film? I mean, I have, since Paul Walter Hauser is kind of a chameleon in roles, I have faith in him playing the role, even though, he's obviously noticeably older than Chris Farley was, and I know recently he was starting to, like get in shape and lose weight. So if he's playing this role, to be method, does he have to gain the weight back, to play the role? And I mean, this is one of those things where I don't know, for some odd reason, it reeks of Wired, except it doesn't have like Bob Woodward behind it. It's just like, do we really need this movie for the big screen? But again, this biofilm trend that is going around in Hollywood, it seems like, any celebrity who's had like a bio written about them and has some controversy or are dead, Hollywood's like salivating at the mouth, like, let's bring this story to audiences, and since John Belushi they can't use, since less said about that film that almost sunk Michael Chiklis's career, the better. So I'm just like, I'd be interested, I guess, as news comes along. But again, since we were around when Chris Farley was around, it's never going to quite do him justice, from just watching his old clips and hearing stories about him. How do you feel about this project?
I mean, I want to see it because I do think Paul Walter Hauser would do great as a Chris Farley, and I don't know too much about Josh Gad as a director, but I have some trust he could do justice to his story. It's just going to be quite the challenge of how you tackle it. I mean, the guy like Belushi and everybody else that came before him was a wild man who did a lot of crazy stunts and, really gave 100% in all his SNL sketches. And then you have the drug stuff going on in the background, and a guy that was kind of depressed. He didn't really have much of a love life, and was just getting hookers, spending money like crazy. Um, how do you do that and make it interesting? To get into the psyche of this guy. That's what I'm curious about, because we know it's going to be tragic. We know how it's going to end, but can you make it different? Can you make it more than just a tragic tale?
Well, it's just like that Jason Reitman movie that's coming out, or that is being made about the early days of Saturday
Yeah.
Night Live. It's all going to be interesting in the casting, because I'm like, who's going to play David Spade?
Mhm.
I nominate Dominic Sessa from The Holdovers personally. See how that would work. But and not to mention, you're going to have to get all these actors of people who are still around. Like, who's going to play Tim Meadows? Who's going to play Adam Sandler? You're not going to get them obviously playing their younger selves and de-age them digitally. Who's going to play Lorne Michaels? Like all this. Who's going to play Bob Odenkirk? Well, Bob Odenkirk can kind of play himself. But I just have all those questions where I'm just like, let's wait a while. I mean, on the plus side, it introduces a new audience to Chris Farley and his antics, but also, is it going to be a bunch of scenes recreating his most infamous SNL moments? That you could easily
Matt
find
Foley.
on YouTube. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's why I'm just like, it's not going to have the same power as when you first saw it originally. Who's playing Kevin Nealon? So next, Chris Hemsworth says Kevin Costner turned him down for a future unnamed Western because Kevin Costner told him, "Nah, kid, I'm playing the role myself." And no offense, there's a big age gap. So I'm wondering what type of character this was supposed to be. Where Kevin Costner, all of like in his 60s and 70s, it's supposed to be a believable like early 40s. Like, yes, that is why I have such a young wife. It's like, dude, you just played a grandfather in a movie 2 years ago. Unless you have this epic 2-part Western coming out, that looks like Wyatt Earp 2. So I'm like, really? I mean, look, we all know Kevin Costner, kind of an ego, a little, a little bit of a Woody Allen. Like, no, I must star in my films. What, you want me to direct someone else? No way. So, how do you feel about this project? Because he is one of the only people who is still actively making Westerns, other than when Taylor Sheridan might write one for somebody else.
I'm not surprised. This is the same Kevin Costner who told John Leguizamo on the set of Revenge not to step into his lighting. Okay, this is the same guy who did Wyatt Earp and bought a bunch of hookers and had his way with them. Took over Waterworld because he didn't get along with the director, and that went over budget massively. And of course, yeah, it's still a good movie. I still enjoy Waterworld. I highly recommend it. And this is the same guy who makes his comeback with Yellowstone, and now gets so high, gets all these big roles. Now he's like, now I'm going to do my Western and drop out of this show that's making me money and giving me success. Yeah, and sorry, I'm just getting over a cold. Yeah, this doesn't surprise me. Like he pretty much thinks he's hot property again, and could overstep even a big young actor like Hemsworth. So he tried to talk nice about it, like, no, I respect Chris. Maybe we'll do something together one day, but he wants to hold on to what he has left because he's still, I think, in that 1980s mindset of still being like, the brand name star that could draw money, but you really draw an older crowd, dude. I mean, it's really senior citizens at this point. I don't even know if it's supposed to be this project that he's coming out with that Hemsworth was up for, but yeah, maybe I'll do something together down the line and all will be forgiven.
Well, I'm like, Kevin Costner now has positioned himself where he has to play the roles like Gene Hackman did in Wyatt Earp. Like, you got to play the lead's father, not the lead anymore, man. But, he'll have to realize that, because it'll all depend if this upcoming Western if they make money, So
and there's 2 of them.
Exactly. So I'm like, what happens if part 1 bombs? The studio's on the hook for a second one, unless they just decide we're gonna sell it off, and then
we're canceling it. We're not even gonna let this out.
Exactly. Look, Kevin Costner, I realize you want to be the new Clint Eastwood, but while I like you and I like your movies, it's like you're not.
No.
Go back to Yellowstone, sir. And next we have Glenn Powell is starring in an adaptation / reboot of the Running Man movie. Now, this news is like, but what makes me more interested in the project is that Edgar Wright is directing this film. That makes me much more interested in this film. So I now am looking forward to this. Though I don't know if I would have cast Glenn Powell. No offense. I have nothing against Glenn Powell. But this is the film where I'd be like, now this seems like more of a Chris Hemsworth type role. Maybe because I'm still thinking of the Arnold Schwarzenegger. So the more classic older man, kind of muscular family man. When I'll admit, I've never read the book. So I don't know what the character is like in the book. If he's supposed to be totally different and they just changed it to a certain way with, the Arnold Schwarzenegger version with Paul Michael Glazer, Starsky directing. I'm just wondering, is it going to be, again, we're going to get like some infamous former game show host to play the supporting role? Because I'm like, if he was still alive, Ray Combs, come on down. Now it's like, are we going to get the guy who played Al in Home Improvement who hosted Family Feud for a little while? Just as long as it's not Steve Harvey. Don't have him.
That'd be hilarious, though.
I'd be like, oh no. But yeah, I'm kind of interested now in this project. How are you feeling about this?
I'm interested in it too. I mean, I always felt The Running Man was not a sacred cow of a movie. I enjoy it, but I remember it was supposed to be a Christopher Reeve movie at one point. Andrew Davis was going to direct, so it would have been a little bit more nuanced and darker than just being another Schwarzenegger movie. And I know Schwarzenegger wasn't crazy about Paul Michael Glazer's direction because it was too much like a TV show direction, if you know what I mean, the way that it's handled. So yeah, there's that. But Edgar Wright, fantastic director. Glenn Powell could fit sort of like a Christopher Reeve type performance there as opposed to being an Arnold. I know, Hemsworth would fit more the Arnold type, but I think Glenn Powell could be easier to play it like an everyman that would work in that type of situation. And if you just maybe play down the cartoonish elements and make it more darker and scarier, like what Stephen King wrote under his pen name, Richard Bachman, then I think you got something. But if you want to go over the top and cast somebody in the Richard Dawson role, or Richard Dawson, sorry, I'm mixing up the two, I would go Pat Sajak. Because everybody hates Pat Sajak now, and he would be great for a villain, like a right-wing game show bad guy.
Pat Sajak, the man hosted a talk show, people.
And make Mary Hart's wife.
Okay. I just had a better idea. Since we're talking people love to hate, Chevy Chase.
But he's too old and fat.
Nobody said the host had to be slim. If he wasn't, at least my first choice was Christopher Walken, but he's way too old now to do it.
In fact, Chevy Chase were to do it, that would be like his attempt, like when he did Memoirs of an Invisible Man. He thought he was going to get an Oscar for that.
Okay, I don't know why. In a John Carpenter movie?
He wanted to be taken seriously back then.
Okay. Oh, Woody Harrelson. Have him be the host. And
I can kind of see it, but I feel like he still has like that backwoods way about himself. It wouldn't quite play.
Okay. Well, I'll be interested in hearing more and more casting. Hopefully it's not what was the one who
not
starred
Matthew Good. I don't want an English actor.
Okay, I wouldn't have suggested him. As long as it's not, unless he's one of the people killed. The one who was in Baby Driver, the lead. And
Oh, the kid that got me too. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, okay. Next, we have Nia DaCosta is bouncing back from the Marvels because she's in talks to direct 28 years later, part 2 in the trilogy. You know, obviously, there was 28 days later. This is 28 years later. And this has an interesting cast circling. Jodie Comer, Aaron Taylor Johnson, who seems to be in almost every action thriller coming out, and Ray Fiennes. I'm kind of interested in this project. You know, even with Nia DaCosta directing, because I'm hoping maybe this will be the film where I see the talent everybody keeps talking about her having. You know, because I didn't see it in Candyman, and obviously did not see it in the Marvels. So, and I know she has like Medea, not the Tyler Perry Medea movie coming out with Tessa Thompson. So either in that one or hopefully this one, I will finally be like, finally, I see it. I see her vision. I see her talents. You know, how are you feeling about this news?
She definitely needs to change that Medea title, or she's in big trouble. Um, Yeah, I'm with you. It gives her a good opportunity to finally show her talent. Even though it's another franchise, it's a franchise that I don't think anybody really micromanages. That it's got to be Danny Boyle style and nothing else. I think you'll allow her to stretch, to do her thing, and not have those constraints like she did with those big studio films. So yeah, I think she's a good choice for it.
Well, it kind of reminds me of what we were talking about, like how to get your original projects made. You have to do studio films because she's kind of become the studio director version, I guess, of Michael B. Jordan. All these like continuances and sequels to movies, but nothing really like kind of an original project that, that she started from the beginning. So I think, unfortunately, especially as an African American woman, she's suffering kind of that same thing. Except Michael B. Jordan's a star, so he can call his own shots. He just chooses to stay in the safety of sequels. Whereas with her, she has no other choice because seems like this is all that she's getting offered. So I'm just hoping finally, she can get her, as they say, Ava DuVernay on. Where it's like, oh, now I see it. I see the original vision. I see why she's getting all the praise. Next, Lionsgate, because why not, has come up with another Blair Witch reboot that they want to make. And this comes on the heels of the stars of the original movie suing for residuals that they never got from the original movie coming out and make it being this box office smash. Now, my question for you, Andre, do you think they have a good case in getting their residuals, especially after we just had, SAG and the Writers Guild have all these strikes for fair pay?
I'm not 100% sure. And I'll tell you why. Because I only remember this was a movie that they kind of threw together, getting all those video cameras from Circuit City and shooting a free for all and then promoting it like it was the real deal. So I don't know what their contracts look like when they made that film. But let's say if they did something where it was deferred or they got paid just for the little bit that they did, there may have been some things they didn't know was going to end up making like hundreds of millions of dollars and that they didn't get to see some of that. So maybe this is like a last minute ditch effort to get those funds. Cause I don't know if they even tried suing when they were doing like the sequels or that first remake that they tried to do a few years back. Only now this is happening. I'm pretty skeptical. I mean, I'm all for them getting what they should because they didn't really do a whole lot after that. They may have done like a couple big films, but nothing major. But it's really like it's a complicated matter because again, we don't know exactly what they signed for when they first did that movie in '99.
Well, also, what I find a little interesting is they not only acted, but half the time they were the ones who were kind of the cinematographers of the film because they were carrying the cameras and filming. I don't know if like the infamous shot where she's scared in the dark with the nose
Mhm.
all in the shot. I don't know if that was a planned shot that the directors told her to do the camera like that, or if that was her. But that's like one of the most infamous shots of the film. And even if she did sign only an acting contract, they obviously did more than act in the film, so, and kind of are responsible for that being, I guess, so legendary and so famous. So I would feel like on those grounds, they should earn, I'm not saying, give them half the film's, earnings, but at least give them some compensation for this. And I agree with you that why did you wait till all these years later to like finally sue? But are you interested in seeing a reboot of the Blair Witch Project?
No, I didn't really like the Blair Witch Project, and I never bothered with any of the sequels or the reboot. So yeah, I don't give a shit about it.
I saw the sequels. I thought they were interesting, but not enough to like, oh, I need more story here. I need to see where this goes. All this Wiccan. And again, I just wonder, like, does this younger generation even care about this franchise? Or is this
No, because the whole found footage thing is played out anyway. Everybody does it.
Yeah, but at least now they know where it supposedly started or what started the trend in more modern horror. Next, Monopoly movie is going to be produced by Margot Robbie. Now, I remember after Gladiator, Ridley Scott actually wanted to direct a Monopoly movie that he wanted Russell Crowe to star in, of all people. And I'm just like, was he going to be the old guy with the monocle and the mustache? Because if so, that would have been a hell of a transformation in a movie. I'm like, I got to hear more, like, plot-wise. Like, it could end up being something like Clue, where it's, like, still well-remembered after all these years. But it could also be like, this is just stupid. But I guess with Barbie making so much money, you never know now. Like, oh, this will be a way of talking about capitalism in a certain way, but comedically or dramatically. It could be like a comedic succession, maybe. I'm hoping more than anything. How do you feel about this project?
I got an even better idea. You universe build Monopoly with Clue. So you have a murder and you're trying to make money, not pass go, and still go to jail.
So this is their cross combination movie you want, rather than the G.I. Joe Transformers movie. And
I think it sells itself.
it could, a murder mystery, and in the I guess in the middle of mergers and acquisitions. So it's like, this is literally cutthroat. See, I already came up with the tagline. Next, this is a double news story because this involves some old-time pros. First, David Lynch's animated project, Snootland Project, was rejected by Netflix. And I have to ask, I love David Lynch, but what made you think Netflix was going to be like, yes, give us this weird art animated project. We'd love to put it on.
Is it accessible? Does it have diversity in it? And probably none of that. And David Lynch is not a conformist. So, yeah, not surprised that they would say no to something like this. But Showtime said yes to more Twin Peaks. I'm more down for that for a fourth season.
Well, I'd be like, if you're gonna do a Snootland project, you considering his reputation, I'd be like, I don't know what it's about, but maybe you should have tried Shudder more. They seem like they'd be more down with it. Or even, I don't know if Criterion Channel really comes out with originals, but I'm sure they would love to finance a David Lynch project.
It shocks me A24 wouldn't finance David Lynch.
Well, it makes me wonder, can this be made into a feature? Because, I mean, Mulholland Drive started off as a series, and then he made it into a movie. So why can't he do this maybe with this animated project? So we'll see. I'm hoping because, any new David Lynch is noteworthy. So, and we also have John Waters' next film after being retired for 20 years. And, his birthday was this Monday. He's going to make another film called Liarmouth, which is based on his feel-bad romance novel. And he already has a star, Aubrey Plaza, but it still needs financing. I'm excited about this because what the world needs now is more John Waters movies. You know, the Pope of Trash finally making another film, especially after A Dirty Shame, which had its moments but was not that great. And um, how do you feel about this story, Andre?
Yeah, I'm excited for it. I feel John Waters has a lot of commentary to add in this environment that we're in. And even the idea of him work with Aubrey Plaza, I think just makes it that much more interesting to see.
Yes, I'm sure this film will have fun. Just with Aubrey Plaza, I mean, I know she's not star, but she's noteworthy enough that independent studio would
She's
find it.
got a fan base.
This has A24 written all over it, you know.
Yeah.
And if they can get her, Jenna Ortega can be in this movie too.
Yeah,
And
they need to team up at some point. You saw that, I think, the award show, I think SAG Awards. They
exact,
totally have chemistry.
exactly. So this could be that project. John Waters, call me. Let me produce this. You know, let me put the cast together.
Hell, come on the show, John.
Oh, please, definitely. Oh, so many questions. And we've met 3 times. I'm just saying. um, Ben Stiller is shocked for some odd reason by the failure of Zoolander 2. And it was the first time where he felt like, I fucked this up. I'm like, yes, you did, because you waited way too long to make a sequel. And where, I mean, you had some smart cameos, but it was like, this movie came 5 years too late, you know? And it's fun poking, you know, fun of celebrity culture with the Justin Biebers, the Ariana Grandes. I even loved Kiefer Sutherland's cameo in it. But it was like, but again, it was made for an older generation that made it. This younger generation does not remember, like, when Zoolander came out and, you know, how much of a, you know, hit it was. Plus, no offense, you and Owen Wilson were way too old at that point to really bring in care for a male model movie, you know, and you still have an 80s haircut. um, what do you think of Ben Stiller kind of, I guess, being taken down a peg by this movie bombing?
Well, I remember when Zoolander came out because it was right after 9/11. Everybody made a big deal about how they had to erase the towers at the last minute. And only saw it that one time. And I liked it. I thought it was funny, but it wasn't a movie that I was going to go back to again and, try to have enjoyment every time it was on TV. Like you said, they waited too long for it. And a lot of comedies that work the first time rarely ever work the second time because when you start trying to repeat the same jokes or to try to expand on an old joke, it gets tiring and it's not really anything fresh or different. You kind of like run the gimmick all the way through, and yeah, just too much time had passed. It got dated, and you know, he really hadn't done a whole lot at that point because I think he'd done Secret Life of Walter Mitty. Like he
Yeah.
was trying to do like very low key kind of comedies and his directing work. And so he kind of like lost his drawing power for quite a bit and never really regained it. So Zoolander just didn't really add much. He definitely is better off like the stuff he does now, like the
No, yeah.
Escape from the prison show that he did for Showtime and the other show he has now with Adam Scott is probably more up his alley than to like go back to Zoolander. I wouldn't mind another Tropic Thunder, but even that I don't even think he can really pull off again the way they did.
Well, see, that's the thing that kills me. Like, the movies you wanted to see sequels to, he takes way too long to make. But those Meet the Parents movies, he was spitting those sequels out like nothing.
Oh, but that third one was shit. Little Fockers.
Which one had Barbara Streisand in it?
She was in Meet the Fockers, and then they brought her and Dustin Hoffman back for Little Fockers.
Okay, so then I will say I can understand the reason for the sequel, so you could meet his parents and played by, of all people, Dustin Hoffman and Barbara Streisand. But like you said, the third one, what the fuck?
Now you bring in the little kids and Jessica Alba's like trying to flirt with them. It made no sense to make.
I think it was an ego boost for her, Ben Stiller, because I'm like, oh yeah, of course Jessica Alba would be throwing herself at me, you know. It's like, so Kevin Costner, when it came to material. But also, it was like, it became like, as I would say, like Will and Grace. Whereas, like, after a while, it was all more about the guest stars than the actual characters that we came to watch this film. It's like, hey, watch Robert De Niro be uncomfortable. Watch Ben Stiller fumble. Watch Terry Polo just stand there. That's what they became. Even, what was it? Is it Blythe Danner who played?
Yeah, Black Danner.
She didn't even really have much to do. And then in the second one, we have obviously a white girl playing a Spanish stereotype character, and supposedly Ben Stiller has like this illegitimate son, which I'm happy Ray Santiago, because he's a good actor, got work, but it was just like, other than looking like Ben Stiller, what's the use of this? Like, this was the stupidest storyline. It just seemed like his writers came up with something last minute. And notice, Ben Stiller never directed any of those.
Nope.
And really, I guess maybe Zoolander 2 bombed at the time, because the only movies that were hits, other than like you had your Secret Life of Walter Mitty, you only had like Night at the Museums.
Yeah, that's all he had. Those made money.
Yeah, but those were also like obviously aimed at children and families.
Right.
Like, they're not gonna be like, the kids aren't gonna be like, yo, I loved him in Night at the Museum. Let me see him play a male model in Zoolander 2. Wait, there was a Zoolander 1? That they're still too young to watch. So I'm just like, I just think it, like I said, I think it was like a smack in the face for Ben Stiller to have a reality check. Like, okay. Because that, if you notice, after that, he really stopped appearing in front of the camera and was more behind the scenes. Because, other than maybe some cameos, like in that Adam Sandler Huey Halloween movie. I don't know what that was. Okay, I liked you in Happy Gilmore, but come on. That character was not like, oh, I got to see him again. Elizabeth Moss says that they're close to finally making Invisible Man 2. They finally cracked the script. Again, why can't we just leave these things alone and just make a single movie? I mean, I can see why Elizabeth Moss wants a sequel, because then she can be like Michael Keaton with the Batman movies. Like, how much you plan on paying me? No, up that. But what is there a need for in the sequel? What is the little girl from the first one, Storm Reed, going to somehow get the suit and we make it into a teenage film?
I thought they hinted that she got the suit and was going to like turn evil, or maybe even some sort of universe building shit with the Universal monsters. But again, it's another one of those things where it's like, you've waited too long to get this made. Like, we're already 4 years in. When is this going to come out? 2026, 2027, when nobody gives a shit? I mean, she's doing better work anyway with The Handmaid's Tale and that other show she's coming out with. She doesn't really need this unless you turn her sinister.
Yeah, but then who would she turn sinister against?
You bring back Aldous Hodge as the cop.
So she's like, we were once close and almost became lovers. Now I must stalk you. It's like, it would be one of those like reversal of characters that hopefully in this cracking of the script would make more sense than just like, well, they gave us this much money to make a sequel, so we had to come up with something. And the Zack Snyder making of the movie. And just to go back to Zack Snyder, you are no Francis Ford Coppola, sir. He can re-edit his own film, but he has 5 Oscars. You have none. And stop being this next generation's Michael Bay, who doesn't go back to his films at all.
No, never.
So, okay, I'm done with my rant on Zack Snyder. And next we still have 3 more stories. Next, we have Julia Garner and Josh Brolin joining Zach Cregger, the director of Barbarians' new movie Weapons, which is said to, no one officially knows what the story is about, but it supposedly might be like Magnolia, on only a horror version, where it's an ensemble cast and their stories kind of crisscross and affect each other. If that's true, I can't wait to see this movie. But, Josh Brolin, always solid. I'm happy to see Julia Garner in a new film. But again, until I see or get a hint of what the project's about, it's hard to really get excited because, I mean, Barbarian had its moments. It had its commentary, too. But it also had a third act where it was just like, this works, but this is kind of silly. So how do you feel about this news of Zach Cregger of The Whitest Kids You Know making finally his second film?
Yeah, I like Barbarian. I like that he's worked with Brolin, and I mean, I don't know too much about Julia Garner other than Ozark, but yeah, it should be fine.
Well, the interesting part, that of course the article that I read tried to insinuate was like Pedro Pascal was originally cast in the lead role, and then the strikes happened, so they had to push filming till next year, and now they're like, oh, he's busy doing the Fantastic Four movie, but so is Julia Garner, and if she can make a hole for this, why can't you, Pascal? It's like, I just like that now. I kind of feel sorry for Josh Brolin, but he's a veteran. Where it's like, well, we were going to get Pedro Pascal. Hey, Brolin, you free? Not like, hey, we couldn't get Pedro Pascal. Benicio, what you up to? Exactly. Even though he's making a Wes Anderson spy film right now. So it's like, and Wagner Moore is like, oh, so no one saw Civil War? I'm a draw. Now, 2 weeks at number one. We'll talk about that movie a little later. I guess, do you have anything else to say on that story?
No.
Other than us going into Karate Kid mode of Miguel's father, of finding every Hispanic actor to replace Pedro Pascal.
I just have to see the trailer. That's it.
Okay. Hey, Martinez, man, I'm trying to get you work, baby. Maybe don't have maybe in a supporting role, they could write a role for Philip Michael Thomas. His comeback role. His Robert
I
Forrest.
would love to bring back Philip Michael Thomas somehow.
Hey, all you got to do, be like Quentin Tarantino for Robert Forrester. Write a strong enough role and insist he played that role.
That man's got a lot of kids, though. I'm shocked.
Hello, look at him. Rappers copied him. They were like, hey, I'm going to have 10 babies mamas and still be pretty. Hey, why do you think he was dating Dionne Warwick all those years in the Psychic Friends Network? They didn't tell her about that. But anyway, our next story is, since we're talking about trends in movies, there's going to be a new exorcism movie called The Ritual, and it's starring Al Pacino, who won't be standing much of the movie, and Dan Stevens. I like Dan Stevens, and I'm glad he's kind of getting his kind of resurgence and renaissance right now. But Al Pacino, I just picture him as like in that Russell Crowe exorcism movie where the priest was Franco Nero and he just sat there and just gave the orders. I feel like Al Pacino, that's going to be his role in this movie.
He just turned 84, so yeah, that's pretty much what his part's going to be. It's just him probably speaking a lot of Italian and cracking jokes.
Well, I feel like this should be like M. Night Shyamalan's like Split, where we at first didn't know this was, spoilers, a sequel to like Unbreakable, and then at the end reveal. So I feel like The Ritual should be at the end. We find out this was all connected to the Russell Crowe exorcism movie. And you have Russell Crowe in a bad Italian accent saying, "Let the games begin." And then somehow we put Charles Dance in there like, I was going to say that.
That would be like that. It would be number one at the box office if he's in it.
Exactly. So producers, listen to me. Connect that shit. Mm-hmm. And for our final official news story, we have the Paramount Pictures release schedule for next year. So first we have the G.I. Joe Transformers movie crossover. This reeks, it makes a little more sense, but it still reeks of that 21 Jump Street Men in Black forced crossover universe that luckily never happened. So Paramount's like, nah, we got to make a shitty crossover film. Aha! Because, like, who's coming back? The Rock?
That's the big question. Who from G.I. Joe movies are going to be in this?
And is this going to be Mark Wahlberg's swan song? It's like, hey, I'll come back. I'm retiring in a few years anyway. You want me to turn heel? I'll do it. But it's got to have Christian values. And you got to have Mel Gibson play my dad. So I don't know. Because after this first one, I never watched any of the sequels, and John Turturro's busy, so he might not.
Much.
Yeah, so I don't know in this new trilogy other than Mark Wahlberg who's in them. So next we have the Star Trek 2025 film. Even though most of the stars have not seen a script, but they keep insisting that a new Star Trek movie will be coming out next year. And
nobody wants this fucking movie.
when has that ever stopped the studio before?
Right, but Chris Pine's going to come back, and you think that's going to make it better? No, people are done. I mean,
if the movie he directed doesn't become a hit, he might be like, I need the money. And Zachary Levi too. You could get him back. John Cho might be the only one who's like, I'm busy. I'm wondering, can we get Cole Meany back as an old Scotty since, unfortunately, Anton passed away?
Yeah, we're going to do something stupid to see young Jean-Luc Picard show up in a time warp.
Why not? Shia LaBeouf. Next, or they could do it a spinoff with Uhura Zoe Saldana, since she's like the most bankable star in that movie now.
So what? Her communicating for 2 hours to aliens? No.
She gets a promotion to captain because they kill off everybody else above her. Hey, it's a Paramount film, so it could.
It's a J.J. Abrams production, and he sucks. Sorry.
Well, I don't think J.J. Abrams is behind this one. I think he's like,
no, he's just producing them, but still, I think he lost a lot of power in Hollywood after Rise of Skywalker.
Well, I'm hoping for an original project from Bad Robot and him that has no IP in it. We'll see. And they also have the Bee Gees biofilm directed by Ridley Scott. Okay. I mean, there's compelling story there, but I'm like, no offense to him, but Ridley Scott?
It would be a tragedy, no pun intended.
Well, I mean, especially after, the Gucci movie wasn't really that big of a hit, and Napoleon, well, Brian Cox more insulted that film than I ever could. So it's just like, but I will say in the trailers, the battle scenes look good. That's the only, but there's no need for that in the Bee Gees.
You think Ridley Scott's lost his prestige with every, bad movie he's done in the last couple of years?
Well, I don't know, because before Gladiator, he wasn't exactly firing on all things, because, for every Thelma and Louise, there was a white squall, So, he's one of those directors. Look, I love Alien, and there's various movies in his thing. I even like Matchstick Men, but then there's always, these big budget films that just feels like, was he really needed in this? So that's why I'm just like, And I'm probably still mad about his movie with Denzel. That did unfortunately get made. And him, Russell Crowe.
Oh, gangster.
Yeah, that should have been so much better. And so, but that's what happens when a studio forces, oh no, let's focus more on the cop story. So, then we have this one I'm actually interested in. The Last Ronin, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movie, R-rated. That project I am interested in because I have the graphic novel. I haven't read it yet, but I've always been interested in this story. So I will be happy to watch that.
A Ninja Turtle movie with a lot of violence and sex. I'm in.
I don't know about the sex. I'm hoping it's not the turtle. I'm like, this is weird. I knew April O'Neil always had a thing for Donatello. And please don't let her be pregnant at the end of the movie. I'd be like, I don't want to see that sequel for that movie. Next, we have, I don't know why, but they're rebooting Scary Movie, and is this to just make it? Is this by the guys who do the spoof movies, and this is their way of making fun of the new Scream movies? And
God, I hope not.
I'm like, that one, y'all. Stop with the reboots of that. No one asked for. No one was like, you know what? I wish they would make a spoof, seventh or eighth spoof movie of horror films. And this one's interesting because I wonder if this is the one that involves Kendrick Lamar, but Trey Parker and Matt Stone are making a comedy movie that's supposed to come out next year. And I know they have a company with Kendrick Lamar that is more of a kind of deep fake company. So I'm wondering if they are just doing this to make a comedy, or if this is that kind of racial kind of movie they wanted to make where, what was it? I think it's a black guy who I guess stars as in those, those old time recreations villages, and he's like the slave in it. Or finds out that his fiance's family once owned his family. And so I'm wondering if that's the project, or is this a totally original project? So that is all of the news for this episode. But now, before we get to the trailers, we must get to those who have dearly departed from us in the entertainment industry. Francis Ford Coppola, who I mentioned earlier, his wife, Eleanor Coppola, passed away. She is infamous for keeping video and diaries of the making of Apocalypse Now that helped eventually make Hearts of Darkness, the documentary about the making of Apocalypse Now. That kind of, I guess, also served up more interest in Apocalypse Now. And now a lot of people have this fandom of the movie because they've seen really what went down behind the scenes, all the craziness and stories, and they can see it in the flesh with, Francis Ford Coppola talking about Martin Sheen after he had his heart attack. He can't die unless I tell him he can die, stuff like that. And, Marlon Brando coming onto the set, like 40 pounds overweight and unprepared, and Dennis Hopper being Dennis Hopper. It's on location, just high out of his mind, playing the photographer. I will admit, I saw the documentary before I even saw Apocalypse Now. So that is what made me interested in watching the movie when I was in my teenage years. So it will, she, in essence, even though it's still part of his filmography, she's a pioneer because that was one of those first documentaries that was a behind-the-scenes documentary that made you want to watch other behind-the-scenes documentaries to see the stories and the craziness that could happen and made them more interesting. Do you have anything to say?
I mean, I don't know too much about her, but I've seen some of those documentaries, at least the clips of them, and yeah, my condolences and thoughts to the Coppola family.
Yes, rest in peace to Eleanor Coppola. Next, we have Joe Flaherty of SCTV fame, who died recently at the age of 82. I didn't know he really stopped working in 2014. So he hadn't worked in 10 years. I'm guessing either he retired or maybe he was sick or just, again, maybe he just didn't feel like making anything anymore because he's had a full career. Just looking at his resume, you have Freaks and Geeks, which was his last big name role. He was in Happy Gilmore as a guy who kept saying jackass.
Yeah.
Back to the Future 2,
Mm-hmm.
Detroit Rock City, Going Berserk,
Used Cars,
King of Queens, I don't know if National Security. It's a movie. Slackers, even Stevens on the Disney Channel. 1941, Heavy Metal. He was involved in all these Stripes. One Crazy Summer. That's where I first remembered him from. Johnny Dangerously, Club Paradise, Follow That Bird. So, I mean, Freddie Got Fingered. I still don't know how that got past censors. Let's see. Speed Zone. Who's Harry Crumb?
My earliest memory of him was the Ed Grimley cartoon as Count Floyd.
Yes.
That was the shit.
I remember. I'm not gonna say it was the shit, but I remember that. You know, again.
You mean Cloud Floyd? Cloud Floyd. It's Cloud Floyd, you idiot.
It reunited everybody from SCTV to guest star on that.
Yeah.
So that's another reason why, that was so noteworthy. But he was just another character, actor, and comedian who once you saw, you're like, oh, I know that he's gonna be hilarious.
Was he in that Maniac Mansion TV show?
Yes, he was.
Yeah, I watched that shit. I was pissed it wasn't like The Game.
Yes, that was why it bombed. It was like
apparently it was a prequel, and I didn't know that at the time.
I know nothing about it. I just remember the show, so I didn't even know anything about The Game. It was on Ellen, Dream On, even Frasier. So many very talented man. Most people, trust me, even this younger generation, you saw him in something. If you're an Adam Sandler fan, you saw Happy Gilmore. So. And, starred as the father in The Perfect Freaks and Geeks, which housed so many future stars like Jason Segel, James Franco, and, rest in peace to Mr. Joe Flaherty. Now we get to our controversial one. Yes, folks, O.J. Simpson has left the building. He has passed away. And now, some of you might wonder why we bothered mentioning him. But he was in plenty of noteworthy films, even though, as a person, obviously was despicable. And, but you got to keep in mind, you have The Naked Gun 2.5, Naked Gun 33 1/3, but also The Towering Inferno. He was also in Roots. No Place to Hide with Drew Barrymore. That was the film I was trying to remember the other day when I was talking to you, with Chris Christopherson or Bradley Cooper Sr. You have the show First and 10, HBO's first sitcom. Back to the Beach, which really did not age well for him and his cameo. In the Heat of the Night, the television series he was on. Cocaine.
Yeah. Is that the one Elizabeth Montgomery?
Yes. Andre's favorite sci-fi film, Capricorn 1.
Very good film.
The Klansman. Death of a Gunfighter and The Cassandra Crossing. And who could not forget the series the tabloids tried to link him with the murders, Frogman. And the Bad Taste prank series after he got out of jail, Juiced. And obviously the infamous interview where he pretty much admitted he did it with that is on, I believe, was it Fox News or CNN? And Judith Regan did the
Fox
interview.
News.
So yes, depending on how you feel, O.J. Simpson is gone, but was a ratings winner with his trial. And the TV movie that everybody won Emmys for that was on FX with Courtney B. Vance as Johnny Cochran, Sterling K. Brown as Christopher Darden, John Travolta as Robert Shapiro, and Cuba Gooding Jr. Show Me the Money as OJ. Truly the only questionable performance in that whole TV movie. But yes, O.J. Simpson has passed. And
just another black man in a spacesuit. Rest in peace, Norberg.
And next, we come to everybody's favorite part of the show, the trailers. And so first, we have Rachel Sennett and I Used to Be Funny, about a stand-up comedian who works as a nanny, and then the girl she watches too disappears, and she's trying to bounce back from it, and she hasn't got any income and obviously isn't doing any stand-up comedy because she doesn't find anything funny about the world anymore. I want to see it only because of who's in it. Rachel Sennett, who I am a big fan of. I'm sorry. I know you didn't like Bodies, but I love that. I liked Bottoms, and I'm just a Rachel Sennett fan. Maybe it's a crush. I don't know, but she has real talent. She's funny. She's beautiful, and she can act. How are you feeling about this trailer?
I didn't find it funny. It didn't do anything for me.
Well, it's supposed to be more of a drama, not a comedy. Like,
Yeah, but it just it's very
it's
dry and vanilla. Just it's not for me.
okay. I mean, it's not like, oh, missing girl. Ha ha ha. This isn't Naked Gun reboot. It's, um, next, we have finally saw Zoe Kravitz's directorial debut with the trailer of Blink Twice, starring her fiance Channing Tatum, Naomi Aki from that Australian horror film Talk to Me, Aaliyah Shawkat from Arrested Development. Those are the big stars that I remember from this. And this is kind of a murder mystery, or maybe kind of Get Outish, where Naomi Aki is engaged to Channing Tatum, and he takes her and her best friend to some tropical island with his friends, and everything there is a little unsettling, especially when her best friend disappears. And it's supposed to be, I guess, a comedic thriller. I have to say, it's the first interesting thing Channing Tatum has done in a while, so I'm interested in it. Even though, strangely, they made it seem like it, when it was filming, that it was filming in Brooklyn, but then you look at this movie and it's like, this is all in the tropics. So I don't know what's going on there. And finally, it looks like Channing Tatum has chiseled himself a bit more in the face. It's a dark comedy, and obviously you could tell it's a first time directing, because a lot of the shots are very stylish and meant to make more of a statement through the shots than necessarily through what's going on in the film. I have to say, I'm in for the ride. I kind of want to see this. You know, I'm not like waiting with bated breath, but when it comes out, I'll check it out. Probably check the reviews first, but I'll check it out. What did you think of the trailer for Blink Twice?
It looked interesting. It looked like it was a cross between Knives Out, Get Out, and Midsummer. The same kind of idea of the tropical island, shit's happening. Looks like he's got something to do with it, and you got some recognizable faces in there. So, yeah, it definitely held my interest enough to be very curious to see it.
Okay. Next, we have the unfortunately titled Daddy-O with Sean Penn and Dakota Johnson, where it seems like most of the film takes place in a taxi cab, where Sean Penn is this cab driver talking to Dakota Johnson, and they open up to each other about their past, where we see kind of flashbacks into it. And I mean, it sounds like an interesting premise and two good actors starring in it, even if she was in Madam Web. That was the movie I couldn't think of the name of. But she has proven to be a good dramatic actress. So I'm looking forward to it. I would find it more interesting if it was a real-time movie, like the 90 minutes was the whole ride, and it's just the two of them. But that might be a little too theatrical for some. But I will admit, I'm probably going to wait for streaming to watch this. I like Sean Penn. I like Dakota Johnson, but 90 minutes of that, I'm getting older. It's like, I might have to be at home to watch that, you know. What do you think of the trailer?
Yeah, 90 minutes of them talking as they're riding a cab. Is this supposed to be Night on Earth? I wasn't getting that vibe. It just felt like I like Sean Penn. I'm kind of indifferent about Dakota Johnson, but this just felt like watching paint dry. It just nothing was really grabbing me here.
Oh, well, I am the opposite. I was grabbed. I like the conceit, and I'm not quite as indifferent when it comes to Dakota Johnson. So,
Waiting for her to
but
talk about her spider mother.
hey, look, we all have our bombs and our bad movies. Stop defining her by it. You know, jeez. She was in 21 Jump Street. So, next, we have the long-awaited Joker 2 Folie A Deux with Joaquin Phoenix reprising his role and Lady Gaga as Todd Phillips once again copies Scorsese and musicals now, like Umbrellas of Cherrenburg, with this tale of the Joker and Harley Quinn meeting in a mental hospital and falling in love. And now the director has admitted this is a jukebox musical movie, so they will be singing snippets of, I think, 15 different songs throughout this film, and kind of changes Harley's background, as it does not appear her being his psychiatrist, but a fellow patient in the hospital. I mean, look, I'm interested. I like the trailer. I wanted to see how they're going to follow it up, and I like Lady Gaga. So this will be interesting. I'm shocked she didn't write any original music for the movie. But, I'm probably in, second weekend, not opening weekend, but I'm in. How did you feel about the trailer?
I liked the trailer. I knew it was going to be a jukebox musical, and it's still as violent as the original. It's still got its big production values in there. I'm just a little bit worried about it though, because when you do a sequel like this and it starts getting too big, it kind of like you expect it to start to fall short quite a bit from the original. And I'm kind of getting this sense that they might have done too much here. Now, hopefully I'm wrong. I hope I'm going to enjoy it when I see it, but there's just something feels a little off. It's not the musical component, because I get there's stuff that's supposed to be going on in his head that plays out like a fantasy, but something just feels off about it.
Okay, well, we shall see. I'm hoping slam dunk, especially, well, it's already going to be hard because he won an Oscar for playing this role in the first film, and now you're doing a sequel and returning to the character. And will the writing will it have as much dramatic gravitas for him to be as iconic again? Or are we going to play more into what they think the fans want from this film? I give them points for making it a musical, because that's something different that you didn't necessarily see coming from the first film. But between this and Deadpool and Wolverine, where's Zazie Beetz' character in these movies?
She's coming back.
I hope so, because I miss her on this big screen. And since I mentioned it, we will talk about Deadpool and Wolverine. The trailer was finally released. And from it, you can tell they kind of kept their promise of this not being Deadpool 3. This being, like the title says, Deadpool and Wolverine. Maybe a little more plot-focused and not, sidebar jokes so much as the Deadpool movies had been before. And obviously pulling in probably most of the cast of the previous movies, and supposedly some of the people who were in those infamous X-Men movies with Hugh Jackman. And this movie, which will most likely be a hit, Jackman needs this because he's got to go back on that fucking diet to play this fucking role again. The trailer looks interesting, more for what it doesn't show than what it does show. Finally, him and Jackman and their rivalry can be seen in all its glory on screen. It seems a little more serious than the previous films, while still having that comedic element and still kind of back talking Marvel a little. I don't know. Sean Levy, is a competent director, but he's known for family comedies rather than, these kind of big budget, violent, comedic films. So I'm just like, I'm sure he did a good job, but him directing, I was never, necessarily for. But I'm going to watch it, and hopefully he proves me wrong and smacks me down. I feel like,
yeah. In his defense, I will say that having an experienced director doing a Marvel movie is kind of a breath of fresh air, given the last couple of films have been mostly, again, no offense to Nina Costa, but just people that they're just pulling out because they're hot property, but then they can't handle a big studio picture. So this is a nice change in pace for that. Trailer excited me. I'm going to be there opening day. I'm interested in all the setups and the secret characters that are going to be in this, because I think that's what's going to blow the doors wide open for the MCU, hopefully.
Well, I'm like, with Sean Levy, he has experience working with Hugh Jackman in that robot boxing movie.
Yeah, Real Steel.
Yeah, and I don't know is he a producing partner with Ryan Reynolds?
Yeah.
So he has history
with Adam's Straw Project.
Yeah, so he has history with both of these guys, so there might be more of a comfortableness than, obviously, since Tim Miller did not come back to Deadpool 2, and then you had David Leitch do Deadpool 2, and now we got another new director. So it feels like maybe it's like a Mission Impossible where each director brings in their own kind of vision to each sequel, so they never quite seem the same. But I'm sure it'll be good, and I have faith in the project. And then next, we have the last in the trilogy, supposedly, Maxine, with Mia Goth returning with an all-star cast. You've got Wild Things Eric Kevin Bacon as the detective hunting her down in all his sleazy glory in Hollywood. You have Elizabeth Debicki playing her director. You have Giancarlo Esposito in a very interesting wig playing, I guess, her agent. You have Moses Sumney as a video store clerk she knows, and the beautiful Halsey, who, like Rebecca Hall, is half African American, but doesn't look it, unfortunately. As I take it, a friend of hers who gets murdered, and it seems like someone is stalking her, but also you have a serial killer haunting all the people she seems to come into contact with. Could it be her? I'm looking forward to this film because it seems like, as like with each film in the series, it doubles down on the time period it takes place in, and this is the sleazy Hollywood of the 1980s, and this more connects to X rather than Pearl, which, Pearl would seem to be explaining the events behind X or the character. So it's exciting to see this all come to a head in this film. Though I feel like this is a movie, if Bill Paxton was alive, he should have been in the Kevin Bacon role. But I am looking forward to this movie. How are you feeling about Maxine?
I'm very excited for it because I enjoy both X and Pearl, and it's obviously a lot bigger, got more star power, which is the only thing that kind of worries me is that they're going too big. But hopefully I'm wrong. Ty West has it pretty much down pat that this is the 80s. This is that, that Hollywood vibe at that time that isn't like it is today. I'm looking forward to seeing that depicted. He's going into, I guess he's doing his own version of Richard Ramirez with the Night Slasher or Night Stalker. And I like the fact they're tying back to that church that was teased in X. So it seems like that's where Kevin Bacon's character's coming in, and all the shit that was hinted in that movie now starts to actually pay off. So that's the part I'm really looking forward to seeing.
Well, we shall see, and can't wait for that to come out. And for our final trailer, we have the new M. Night Shyamalan film, Trap, starring Josh Hartnett as a suburban father who takes his daughter to this, I guess, a pop star concert. And then he finds out that this concert is all really a trap to capture a serial killer. And it's hinted that he is that serial killer as he looks at his phone and we see him having some guy chained up in his basement. But here's my question. Is the twist that is the actual serial killer and that Josh Hartnett is a vigilante who caught him? Dun, dun, dun. Either way, I'm in, I notice as he gets, maybe because of the debacle that happened with like Lady in the Water, I like that the whole thing when it comes to M. Night Shyamalan film is that they're not dependent on twist anymore. They're dependent on a good idea, and then we see where it goes. That naturally might have a twist, but not like a big dramatic one where you're like, what? It's more of a, that's interesting. And I'm hoping this is the first time in his later films that isn't based on something he read and he just quietly adapted, So I'm looking forward to that because Josh Hartnett's having a hell of a year, between, Oppenheimer, now this. I'm like, we might be in a heart renaissance, So we'll see, but I definitely want to see this film. How are you feeling about this trailer?
This might be the first time in a long time I've actually gotten excited for a M. Night Shyamalan movie. I love the whole concept and love it so much. It almost makes me wish Bruce Willis was healthy enough to do it instead of Josh Hartnett. But hey, it is what it is. I like the idea. I think the pop star looks kind of hot. in it. So yeah, I definitely want to check it out.
Now, my question: would you want to see this if Jason Statham had started? It's,
Well, then I would expect more ass kicking. This is pretty much more psychological.
well, this could have been Jason Statham trying to be dramatic. It's,
Oh, but he's done that. He's not very good.
hey, that doesn't mean he shouldn't try. Maybe he got better over the years after making The Beekeeper. I don't know. So, and working with Guy Ritchie over again, explaining to him, "This is how you do it. Stop your model ways, British Bruce Willis." Hey, you mentioned Bruce Willis that, so my mind immediately went to, "Hey, what if he was in this movie?" So that is the end of the trailers.
If you like this review, please be sure to like and hit subscribe to be alerted to new episodes in the future.